every other month I'm notified that one of my staff is going to be deployed. It doesn't necessarily make me angry, it makes me sad, because they come back different, very different.
Everybody around me told me I had it, angry all the time. I feel guilty, I guess, is the biggest thing I feel. I can't hold a job down for some. I've had, I think, about a dozen jobs since 2005.
I was arrested with, initially was charged with attempted murder.
I think asking for help shows weakness. I think that's kind of a leftover from being in the Army.
Grunts, soldiers, Marines have a reluctance to admit defeat or to feel broken a bit. The Army trains very well into this suck it up. Just suck it up. Suffer in silence.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind, our country, our communities, our nonprofits, our faith communities are absolutely not prepared for the epidemic that we face today.
Outside the sheriff's office in Augusta, Maine, 6 stars on a sign signify the number of deputies and corrections officers serving overseas. 9 years ago, one of those stars was for Randy Liberty.
I felt called to serve in Iraq. My unit had been activated, but I felt like it was time for me to go. And some of the individuals had deployed twice in the Army system, and I felt like it was time for me to do my duty.
You knew about death.
Yeah,
going into this.
Mm-hmm.
You've been a sheriff's deputy.
Yeah.
But you weren't prepared for it.
No, nothing prepares you. And, you know, at the time, I think I've been in law enforcement 24 years or something, and who knows, maybe, you know, 35, 40 fatal accidents and a lot of suicides and unattended deaths and you know, a lot of gunshot wounds, self-inflicted. You know, firefighter, EMT cop types that go to war already have some scarring, emotional scarring, I think, from the stuff that we are exposed to. But nothing prepares you for the violence of war.
In 2004, Liberty was a 40-year-old sergeant major ordering 18 and 19-year-old American soldiers into battle.
Hey, go up. Okay, move it up.
He fought for most of the 10 months in Fallujah, a particularly brutal war zone. Liberty recorded these images with his cell phone.
On average, we did 25 to 30 combat patrols a day. All hours of the night, sporadically searching houses, kicking in doors. It's you or him. Combat is a real combination of fear, deep sorrow, exhaustion, adrenaline, sleeplessness, and complacency, but hypervigilance. The violence is horrific. The violence of a 50 cal or a mortar or a roadside bomb is just, it's indescribable. You know, dying that happens in combat is not like movies. It's a lot of moaning and crying and you frantically trying to save somebody you care about. I hit 2 roadside bombs while I was there. I felt the extreme heat and fire. I could feel the concussion in my organs, sort of, and I blacked out. We all kind of came to. I spun it around. I went back through the kill zone.
Randy, which is worse? Having to kill somebody, another human being?
Yeah.
Or sending one of your people into a dangerous place?
The civilian casualties that are unattended, you know, your unattended deaths, those are the worst. You know, the women and children, the old folks that you didn't intend to kill.
Liberty returned home in late 2005. He knew things were different, but he thought he would be okay.
It's just nothingness, just quiet nothingness. You're not sure how to act, really. And then 2 days later, and they go through a question, do you have any injuries? And everybody's like, no, I'm good, regardless if you are or not, because you want to get home. And then you fly home, and very green here, very quiet, and people don't understand. If I walk on Water Street in Augusta, those 3, 4, 5-story buildings, that would be like walking down through this. Fran was the main drag in Fallujah. And we're constantly 360 looking at my troops, looking for identifying targets. So when I came back, new experience for me. I didn't know, I thought maybe after a short period of time, I'd be okay and just suck it up and be okay. But it didn't work out that way.
He really just started behaving in a way that I just didn't know who that was, and I was shocked.
Jody Liberty has known Randy since she was 17 years old.
As time went on, he started to become more intolerant of people, and he would have this, like that. His behavior would just turn, and he would be irritated, upset, and then it just kept getting worse and worse.
Liberty ran for sheriff of Kennebec County and was sworn in 2007. The job brought added responsibilities and pressure. He still believed that he could manage his emotions alone, but one incident in particular set off alarm bells. Driving an unmarked car and his wife and son with him, Liberty pulled over a driver who had angered him.
0 to 100, I was just stupidly angry. And so I put the blues on, and he pulled over, and because he feels like, hey, I'm sorry, just gave the finger to a cop.
Randy got out of our vehicle, and our 10-year-old at the time was in the back. And so Randy went up to the vehicle, and he just about ripped the door off the hinges of this vehicle.
I grabbed him and was going to yank him out of the vehicle, and we were going to fight.
Caleb and I were watching in disbelief because we had never seen something as aggressive as that coming from Randy.
He was seatbelted in, he was hanging on his seatbelt, and he wouldn't come. So I was just ready to go, and I'm the sheriff, I'm the sheriff.
And so when Randy got back into the vehicle, Caleb looked at him and he said, "Randy, don't you think you were a little hard on that guy?" And we didn't say anything for the rest of the trip home.
Co-workers also noticed changes in the sheriff.
His soul was affected. You could see it in his face. He was different in meetings. He was very edgy. He was open to talk about the experiences, but he had to take moments where he needed to get his composure back together because he was very upset about certain situations that had transpired over there. But he was different.
I was at, my wit's end about what I could do for him. So one morning I called his brother Ron as I was driving to work, and he answered, and I just started crying and crying and crying. And I said, "You just have to help me. I need your help." And Randy wasn't listening to me, so I asked him to please go over to the office and talk with Randy. And I didn't want Randy to know that I called Ron to do this because I thought he would be upset with me because I knew he was resistant regarding treatment.
Jody, she took the hardest first step in reaching outside the family and saying, "Listen, Ron, he'll listen to you. He won't really listen to me." And I can understand that a lot of times when you're that close, but I'm in a different kind of position in his life.
And he didn't realize that Randy was going through this because everybody else knows Randy is happy, joking, and so when Randy comes home, he takes his uniform off and he's Randy. He's Randy to me. He's not the sheriff or he's not the soldier, but he's Randy to me. So Ron went over that morning and started talking to Randy, and Ron was so shocked at how close to the surface Randy's feelings were, because when Ron just touched on a subject the subject of the war and combat, and Randy just broke down.
I went to the VA and talked to them about it. I told them to give me a half an hour, and I came back here to his office, and I told him, I said, listen, I've been to the VA, I've talked to them about you, they're going to call you and make an appointment.
In late 2009, 4 years after he had returned from Iraq, Liberty took the difficult step of seeking therapy.
Over about a 16-week period, every Tuesday I'd go and I'd dread it. I'd look for reasons not to go, because it's like ripping a scab off. It really is painful.
No therapist will ever publicly divulge information about a client, but Sheriff Liberty insisted that the VA allow Dr. David Meyer to be interviewed about the sheriff's post-traumatic stress. The sheriff wants to send a message to veterans that there is no stigma attached to being in therapy.
You know, it brings you back to that pain. It brings you back to that, you know, and I say pain because there it's repressed. I was a sergeant major, so as sergeant major, you're the man. And so you really can't express those feelings there.
Big thing is trying to allow a person to feel emotion. You know, one of the things when you're in a traumatic event is you shut down emotionally, and that's helpful. You know, and I understand that. I was an EMT firefighter for many years, and in order to survive, you do have to just put emotion away. And in the military, you're taught to not have the emotion, and if you do, you're taught to turn it into anger and use that anger against, you know, the enemy. If you can't connect with yourself emotionally and connect with others emotionally, it's a very isolating experience. And it's uncomfortable when people are emotional. But that emotion is what is the difference between surviving and living. You know, you want to be emotional when you go to the little kid's birthday party and everyone's laughing and enjoying themselves, and you're kind of standing there not connecting, not knowing, you know, feeling like this outsider, not fitting in. Even for sad things, when you go to a funeral of someone you care about, you know, being able to experience that sorrow, being able to cry, and that's a common thing we hear is, even when I want to cry, I can't.
You know, my symptoms were sort of quick to be emotional, much more than I was before, and then quick to be angry. You know, quick to be angry, quick. You know, 0 to 100, just quickly angry.
What do you think you were angry at?
As I was indoctrinated in the military, socialized throughout my life, good guys, bad guys, Americans go off to war and you know, they save the day, and when you go to war, it's not like that. No white horses, you know, it's very gray, and war is about violence and you know, killing the other guy before he kills you. And you see a lot of things that you know, we talk about, you know, collateral damage. Collateral damage means you know, families get killed, and that makes me angry. Makes me angry that we went to Iraq with no real intended purpose, and what was accomplished? Probably nothing.
I think that the one person that you didn't talk about as far as who you're angry with is yourself. And we see that a lot with veterans, is they're angry with themselves for having to be in those situations, for having to make the decisions to send people to war. And that's a big one.
How do you counter that?
Well, we look at it logically. First we process it. There has to be an understanding, and with the goal of acceptance. You know, this is what happened. These are the reasons I did it. These are the reasons we had to do it. You know, bad things happen in war. Period. You do things that are horrible in war. Things that you never would want to have to do in war, and you still do. And I think that that's the hardest part when you come back. Is now you're in a new set of rules.
This sort of, you know, decorks that bottle, and you live that emotion finally, and you do it over and over and over. And it's very painful to do, but it's necessary, I think. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself cured?
This is the new normal for me. You know, the quick to emotion and the angry piece is minimized, but it's there. You know, I left Iraq 7 years ago, and you know, I'm still a little angry, and I'm still you know, quick to be emotional, but I'm not, you know, it's much minimized. It made a big difference for me. It's who I am now. You know, it's who I am now. That's it.
As Randy Liberty came to terms with his post-traumatic stress in 2010, he began thinking about the inmates in the jail. How many of them had served their country? Did any of them have PTSD? If so, did it contribute to their incarceration? Several tragic incidents brought it all into focus. In July of 2010, a former Marine, James Popkowski, was recklessly shooting a gun outside the VA in Augusta. He was confronted by authorities and shot dead. A year later in Farmington, another vet, Justin Crowley Smilek, was shot and killed by police after threatening them with a knife. Then there was the death of Randy Worthley, a Vietnam veteran, former commander of the Maine VFW, and friend of the sheriff's. Worthley had severe PTSD. In 2002, Worthley had pled guilty to a charge of drunk driving. The case went all the way to the Maine Supreme Court, as his lawyer argued that incarcerating someone with severe PTSD was cruel and unusual punishment. The court disagreed. Then, in 2010, after being arrested again for drunk driving, Worthley was incarcerated. Without his medication, he began hallucinating. According to a police report, when the sheriff furloughed him to get his medication, Worthley exited out of a moving car and jumped off a bridge in Augusta.
You know, Vietnam really killed him 45 years later. If we had better advocacy for those veterans, that would have never happened.
For Liberty, the system had dramatically failed. How many other veterans would follow? What could he do to help? He came up with a unique but risky idea.
For me, that was the catalyst to start looking at some way to change the way we're doing business. And that started the concept of the Veterans Block.
10-4.
So this is the Veterans Block, and in the Veterans Block we have 8 to 10 individuals that have some police involvement and have been incarcerated, and they have a service connection normally, maybe influencing their sentencing, their crime. The staff and I identified that we are a nation at war, and not only do we have a large population of Vietnam veterans that have been struggling with PTSD and other issues for 40 years, but we've been at war previously in Afghanistan and Iraq for more than 11 years, and so we have a lot of younger veterans coming back with issues. Just being veterans, they have a bond of shared experiences, and as you'll see here, is much calmer. I think more therapeutic. We can focus some of the programming that's veteran specific from the VA and from the Veterans Center, and so that's what makes it a bit different. If you've been to combat, you know, and that you're the only. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So what happens is you only know about combat if you've been there, and so we're fortunate at the Sheriff's Office. We have a bunch of many combat veterans that serve in the facility, and between the mentorship of the individuals in the block and the awareness of the staff and their knowledge of the impacts of combat, I think that serves a great purpose.
There are 10 veterans in the block. One is Jeff Hodgkins. He was arrested in 2012 after robbing a pharmacy in Augusta. He was desperate, strung out, and looking for drugs.
I did it because there was nothing to stop me. I put on a beard and a wig, and I went in there and handed her a note, and it was that simple.
What is it about here that has changed your
You've
life?
got like-minded people. A lot of other blocks, you've got a lot of younger people. Different values, I think. It's the unwritten rule. A vet kind of understands a vet.
In March of 2013, Jeff Hodgkins was released from jail after serving 8 months.
Mindful of each precious moment, live life with an open heart and mind.
A ceremony celebrated 7 inmates' graduation from an addiction recovery program.
We must accept the love and support of others.
For the next year, longer if needed, Jeff will be required to report weekly to the Veterans Court, and he will be provided with a wide array of services from crisis counseling to drug testing. He will be assisted in reintegrating with his family and his community, and they will help him return to college.
I'm concerned about him, but I have high hopes for him, and I think he's going to do okay.
I want to thank, I get more of an acceptance speech than so much of speaking, but that's all right. Justice Mills and the Vets Court and the DA's office, thank you for this opportunity, because without that I'd be in prison right now. So thank you very much. Also, Officer Moody and Officer Badgepie and the Sheriff, you know, I built up these walls. I mean, we're all combat vets, and there's a pain that we all know. And for a long time I thought I was the only one. And you guys made me realize that I'm not the only one. Thank you. And to my family, finally. Thanks for believing in me, even when I have given you every reason not to be here today. All of you, thank you very much. This is the easy part. You know, anybody can do time. Time is easy. It's when you get out, that's when the work begins, and I'm cautiously optimistic. So, you know I am still an addict, and I gotta watch myself.
Six weeks after being released from jail, Jeff Hodgkins died of an overdose.
Do not let your hearts be troubled.
Law enforcement authorities have ruled the overdose accidental. His family is not only distraught but unbelieving that he would have turned back to drugs. He was happy, they say, and things were going well for him.
Nothing adds up. He was so happy. He got accepted to rent this house that he was going to move into. He was really excited about that. He found out Friday morning that he was going to be able to move into this house.
Jeff had been staying in Augusta in a halfway house recently set up to help veterans.
Our last 10 days have been really sad. It's been a long grieving process, a long painful process, a time of anger, both of our staff and our clients. The client, what could I do different? How could I help? What could I say? Did I notice something that I should have said?
In its first year of operation, this shelter had more than 70 veterans come through its doors and successfully move out.
Veterans are twice as likely or more to be homeless. Veterans are 2 to 3 times more likely to have physical disabilities. Veterans are 3 to 4 times more likely to have a mental health disability or challenge. They're 2 to 3 times more likely to have substance abuse. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind, our country, our communities, our nonprofits, our faith communities are absolutely not prepared for the epidemic that we face today.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
On April 5th, 2011, we accepted our first veteran member, and he is our first graduate today.
In September of 2013, the first graduates of the Veterans Court were honored.
We thank the men and women represented here by these veterans who sacrifice sometimes everything to serve and to protect the United States of America.
There's a struggle going on right now. There's a struggle between those who think you will make it and those who think you won't. There's a struggle between those who think that at some point you're going to choose the easy road of returning to a life of addiction, and that we simply should build bigger and more prisons, and that that's the answer. And then there are those who believe in you and who believe that you can make it.
He lists his plans for the future as spending time with his daughters, with his wife, and making as many good memories as possible. Congratulations, Travis. Prior to entering the military, he had no mental health problems, no substance abuse issues, no criminal record. Dan did not need a 30-year sentence for a Class A offense. He needed help.
I owe my life to this program, really. This program took me in when I was down and out. I was homeless, unemployable. There was no way I could work. This program has gotten me the treatment I needed. It's gave me my freedom. It's given me the ability to relate to people and be able to talk. It's given me income so that way I can support my kids. I just can't say enough about this program, and I want to thank you all for that. I appreciate it.
It was a struggle. It's probably the most difficult thing I've ever done. Things are going a lot better, starting to come together for me. I've got custody of my children back, which has been great. They started school this year in Winslow and going to college. Before, I wouldn't go grocery shopping because I was, it's kind of that innate fear that something's going to happen. And I just kind of have to tell myself constantly, really, that I'm home, I'm safe. I can drive and I'm not going to get blown up, or I can go to the store without worrying about getting shot. Didn't think I was ever going to be able to handle going to school and dealing with the stresses like that. Because before I started the program, I couldn't deal with stresses of even leaving the house. So it's definitely it's been a big surprise for me. It's been a lot better than I expected.
On a Saturday morning in August of this year, 178 soldiers from the National Guard received a send-off in Portland. They were deploying for 9 months' service in Afghanistan. These men and women come from more than 100 communities across the state of Maine. A few are from neighboring New Hampshire and Massachusetts.
We are with you 100%. We are so proud of you, and we're humbled by the commitment that you're making to this country.
A major part of their mission is to break down forward operating bases in remote areas of Afghanistan. A deputy from the Kennebec County Sheriff's Office is one of the troops.
I haven't let my wife know what I'm doing exactly yet. I know it's going to be pretty dangerous, but I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Society. Every generation has a war, and when we send these individuals off to war, we're waving the flags and we have the yellow ribbons and go get our boys. When they come back, we have a moral duty to help these folks reintegrate. When you pull the trigger, you lose guys, it changes you forever. So it's our duty, I think, as a society to continue to invest in these individuals so they can fully recover.
9 years after Randy Liberty fought in Iraq, another star went up on the sign outside the sheriff's office. That brings the number of deputies and corrections officers who have served their country overseas to 30.
I hate to say it, but every other month I'm notified that one of my staff is going to be deployed. I just get one back and then another one's going. It doesn't necessarily make me angry, it makes me sad, because they come back different, very different.